Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. Wildfires in Canada are going to be roughly impacting 110 million Americans with poor air quality over the coming days. At the same time, we've got a powerful low-level jet that's going to be moving in from the west, setting up several rounds of severe storms. And then the heat really starts to build across the southern plains heading into next week. So let's start off with the overall satellite picture this morning and walk you through the details. Take a look at this backdoor trough. That's actually bringing in some much cooler conditions for a good part of New England and much of the Northeast, and they're experiencing those cooler than average temperature anomalies. Further south into the Caribbean, we do have a lot of convection towards Jamaica and back into the Turks and Caicos area. They're going to be impacted with very heavy rainfall. We've got a powerful subtropical jet stream that's been moving in from the west coast. Powerful low pressure center right here. You can actually see the swirl off the coast of California. And then we just have these kind of diurnal type heating showers and thunderstorms that kind of bubble up in the heat of the afternoon across portions of Texas, back into Oklahoma, and good part of Wyoming, back into Montana. They've seen a lot of rain as of late, and there's plenty more on the table in the days ahead. Let's take a look at the severe weather setup today. So out here, we've got that vorticity out here in California, and to the north, that's where the severe storms are going to be. So yeah, we could be looking at some marginally induced severe storms across portions of Oregon, getting into Idaho later on this afternoon. We got a late active dry line out here in far west Texas, and there's going to be a little bit of storm action across swinging a portions of the Dakotas. That swings into portions of Missouri. And then we just have that leftover energy of what's left of what was Arlene that's still bringing some very heavy rains across portions of southern Florida. But man, today is the poor air quality across a good part of the Northeast. In fact, look at this, folks. I mean, parts of New York City is very unhealthy. I mean, gosh, the air quality, just the winds are going to be with that backdoor trough that's going to be moving in, dragging down all those wildfire and the smoke into these regions. And I think this really starts to amplify and actually extends further southwest as that trough moves southwest. That'll bring the smoke along with it in the coming days. As you wake up to tomorrow, it's going to be feeling really nice in a lot of these areas. This is complements of that backdoor trough. So here's the leading edge of this, extending all the way into portions of Missouri. You'll start getting into the action with the much more cooler temperature anomalies, at least in the morning time. That filters down into Kentucky. Some of these areas, in fact, could break some record low temperatures tomorrow morning. That actually sneaks into portions of Virginia. Out west, we've got that little low pressure center with that swirl, that spin, that brings in the cooler temperature anomalies. And just in the middle of the country, we've got warmer than average conditions, and that is continuing to build. So as we transition into the severe weather setup for Friday, again, we kind of have the same areas because the same dynamics continue to remain in effect with far west Texas, same areas out to into the Pacific Northwest and along the coastal regions out into the southeast. But the cooler air really maximizes itself, and I think sneaks all the way into portions of Kansas as well as into Arkansas. So you can see all the blue shaded areas. That is well below average temperatures. I mean, by June 9th, by then, that's going to be feeling really nice as you wake up for your morning walk. So take the dogs out early, because man, it's going to be feeling really nice. You're going to want to take advantage of this, because real summer is right around the corner, and this is going to be a distant memory after this. So let's take a look at the overall radar depiction, what things could look like over the next 48 hours. These active diurnal type setups, they have very low steering currents. Short range models really have a hard time picking up some of the intensity of rainfall because of the very short, low level steering currents that they bubble up in the heat of the afternoon, and they tend to have very light winds aloft. And some of these areas could literally rain 3 or 4 inches, and then 10 miles down the street, you basically have nothing. And you've seen that as of late in parts of Texas and parts of Oklahoma as of late. And I think you're going to be seeing that over the coming days. There's actually no cap in Texas right now and no sinking air. It doesn't take much to bubble up the atmosphere to overturn it. These aren't severe in the middle of the country, but they do have some very heavy rain producers and a lot of lightning associated with them, which have sparked house fires as of late down in that region. But here's where the smoke is going to be by the time you wake up at the Friday morning. Like I mentioned, the further southwest that backdoor trough sneaks in, that's just going to be dragging down the smoke along with it from Canada. So this is where I think you've got encompassing about 110 million Americans are going to be dealt with poor air quality as you get into the day on Friday, because that's where the smoke is really going to be pulled in from that backdoor trough. And all these areas highlighted, you're going to be seeing some sort of haziness in the atmosphere and poor air quality. So just use extra precaution if you have to be outdoors as you head into the next couple of days. But the real deal, folks, is this active subtropical jet stream. I mean, this is the El Nino is coming on alive and well, and it's still building. Not technically officially El Nino, but man, it is not that far away to meet their criteria. And we've just got this persistent subtropical jet that's going to be moving in. And this is actually kind of the leftover effects of what was super typhoon out there in the West Pacific at the end of towards the last week of May. That got drawn up into the Aleutian Islands, and a lot of that energy is being dragged down off the West Coast now. And that energy is going to be pushing across. And it's something typically you don't see this such a dip in the jet stream out west. This is something you would normally see in like April or May timeframe. So what's concerning is you see this in June. So you've got a lot of higher temperatures by now, right? And then you've got much higher dew points. So you got much more water vapor energy to tap into this low level jet that's going to be coming across. And so definitely as we transition into the day on deeper into the day on Saturday, we're going to be high alert for severe storms. So we've got this system out west, right? And then we've got these subtle leading jet streaks that are going to be moving across portions of Texas and Oklahoma. And on the northern periphery, right around the Red River, I think things are going to be getting active as we get into Saturday afternoon. In fact, they're going to be tapping into some of these elevated dew points. I mean, look at the surge, all these areas in purple. Those are well into the 70s, folks. So anytime you get something over 70, that is considered oppressive. And especially with the heat really trying to build down there into Texas. I mean, the temperatures are going to be well into the 90s by then. Tapping into that active low level jet, there are your 90 temperatures, and it's probably going to be hot enough to hit convective temperatures, which means the atmosphere is going to be overturning in peak heating time frames. So it looks to overturn somewhere into the Oklahoma City area, maybe along the Red River. But those look to be a convective complex that could form in the heat of the afternoon and then dive southbound. And those will be some big time hail producers, definitely some gustier winds, and even maybe a tornadic setup along the Red River. I mean, the Cape values are pretty extreme in this area, over 4,000. So there's plenty of energy, plenty of heat to tap into, plenty of water vapor, plenty of fuel to fuel these thunderstorms. And that is the concern, and that's why the Storm Prediction Center has that slight risk already. This is a day 4 risk, right? We've had a little bit of reprieve on the severe weather front, but I do feel it's going to ramp back up in a big way. So it's going to be starting to get really active starting on the day on Sunday, and it could be a multi-day event. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Pretty much 5 days in a row there, we could be looking at some very active severe weather setups. So this is the day on Saturday. So across portions of the Oklahoma City area, down into the Red River, encompasses all of North Texas. And I think those actually sneak into portions of Central Texas and then swing off into East Texas as you get deeper into the evening time frame. But there's your setup where the severe storms could be going into Sunday. So we have another risk probability of strong to severe storms across portions of northern Texas, getting into Oklahoma, maybe sneaking into Arkansas by then, back into Louisiana. That'll probably be on the daytime on Sunday, but then the heat is the real deal, folks. I mean, these heat indices, this ridge of high pressure is dominant over Mexico, and that's going to be sneaking northbound. And these are heat indexes as we get undone on Sunday. Look at that, folks. 110 plus 115 showing up at Laredo. That is dangerous stuff. And those hundreds are going to be sneaking all the way into Austin. And eventually that's going to be sneaking into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This is a heat index, what it actually feels like. This area has seen a lot of rain lately. And so obviously the ground has plenty of moisture, and you've got that heat combined with it. And those south winds, wow, it's going to be feeling really oppressive, and we're going to be probably sneaking close to heat advisory criteria further north, but definitely heat advisory criteria into South Texas. But there's that boundary to the north into Oklahoma. We're going to have to be concerned about another round of severe storms. So here's the setup. I mean, this ridge starts to amplify and really starts to build further south. And as it does, it's going to start to really overtake South Texas into Central Texas and eventually North Texas, as the trough, the subtropical jet, lifts a little bit further north, and that puts all the instability across this region into portions of maybe the Panhandle, into Oklahoma. And it's the northern periphery of this ridge, this subtropical high pressure, that looks to eventually sneak up and then maybe park itself over Austin for like a week or two at least. I mean, it doesn't really seem to go anywhere once it really locks in, probably starting around the 12th or the 13th time frame. So further to the north, look at that. We've got another area of low pressure here that it's got a lot of spin in the mid levels, and that is actually going to be sneaking down a cold front. It's going to be a progressive one, but it's also going to bring down this little low pressure center, and that's going to eventually bring some very welcome rain across portions of Missouri, Illinois, back into Indiana, back into Ohio. And then you have another area of lift out here off west, and that's going to be the culprit to lift and bring the severe storms across these regions as we get into that, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. So here's the setup. So here's the vorticity further to the north. That's the lift. You've got the vorticity out to the west, and then you got these little short waves that come across the southern plains that activate the severe storms. This is your setup as we head into possibly Monday time frame, with the Texas Panhandle getting back into North Texas again. This is probably going to be swinging over into portions of Arkansas. The south side is the ridge, and the ridge will finally start to try to lift further north, but we've got several rounds of severe storms to be concerned about. So the only two ways you lose power in these areas are basically going to be some severe storms or the heat, and both of those are going to be the real deal over the next, you know, between say the 12th and maybe the 16th time frame, as the heat really starts to build and the severe weather front is on the front end of it. And then eventually the ridge starts to overtake and eventually going to win the war. So here's the setup on the 14th. So that's the setup going from Mexico, is really shifting further north. And this, like I mentioned, I think it actually parks itself like right over Austin. I mean, it doesn't seem, that's just seemed to be like where the bullseye really starts to take shape, and then it just expands, and then it expands and eventually lifts up into Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, get into Mississippi, and this thing will really start to kind of take over as it eventually shifts further and further north as we get past mid-month. But here's the temperatures as we get into the 15th time frame. These are actual temperatures, folks, and the real concerning part is the heat index. So when you get to see an actual temperature of 107, 108, you're getting those feels like of the 115 range. This is dangerous stuff, folks. And that dangerous heat index will shift further north into central Texas, and eventually probably going to be getting into North Texas, and eventually that's going to be sneaking into Oklahoma as we get into that further, deeper into that 16th time frame. Because even the Climate Prediction Center right now has a moderate risk for excessive heat headed into that 14th, 15th, 16th time frame. And like I mentioned, as the ridge will sit there, it'll expand. And as then the taps are going to be drying out for Texas. The rain is going to be a done deal, and the heat is going to be really taking over. And that heat will be lifting further north and eventually heading up into Missouri, and those areas will start feeling the heat in a big way. But by the time we head into the 22nd, and we'll be in official summer by then, I think the heat will really start to expand even further. Going to be really dominant over Texas. Like I mentioned, I don't think it goes anywhere once it really sets up shop across those southern plains. This is a similar setup to 2009. We've got a little bit of same similar dynamics with the initiation of the pending El Nino to come. This is exactly where we were maybe sometime 14 years ago, back in 2009. So we're starting to see a lot of similarities back to that analog to reach it back to 2009. And I think that's going to be playing out in that time frame. We had a lot of heat really starting to build and amplify for a good part of the summer over Texas, and the main concern with the El Nino really building is just the brutal heat in the form of very high heat indexes, with days and days of heat advisories eventually is going to be taking its toll, and the heat is going to be a huge concern as we get deeper into summer and the forms of the feels like temperatures that are coming for much of the southern plains. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update while I protect you before and after the storm.